Hello listeners, this video discusses a poem written by Nissim Ezekiel, a very Indian poem in Indian English. This is a simple poem written in typical local Indian English. Although this poem is written in 90s, it still portrays the current situation of world politics and Indian society. Let us have a small look about Nissim Ezekiel. He was born in the year 1924 and died in the year 2004. He was an Indian Jewish poet, actor, playwright, editor, and art critic. He is a prominent figure in post-colonial India's literary history. He is popular for Indian poetry in English. In the year 1983, he received Sahitya Academy Award for his collection Later Day Psalms. Ezekiel has enriched Indian English language through poetry, and he has used modernist innovations and techniques in his works. He has enlarged Indian English literature. He has used spiritual and Orientalist themes with wider range of concerns and interests. He also includes familial events and skeptical societal introspection. Ezekiel began his writing career with his first book, A Time to Change, published in the year 1952, and in the year 1960, he published another volume of poems. It is The Deadly Man. He co-founded the literary monthly Jumbo magazine in the year 1961. Then he became art critic of the Times of India between 1964 to 66. He then edited Poetry India 66 to 67. Ezekiel then published his 3 plays, which includes Nalini, Marriage Poem, The Sleepwalkers, published in the year 1969. His famous poem, The Night of the Scorpion, is used as a study material in India and Colombian schools. In India, his poems are used in NCERT and ICSE English textbooks. Nissim is considered as the father of modern Indian English poetry by many critics. He has honored with the Padma Shri Award by the President of India in 1988 and the Sahitya Academy Cultural Award in 1983. Nissim occupies a unique position among Indo-Anglican poets of post-independence era. Let's see an introduction of this poem, very Indian poem in Indian English. This poem is in the form of a satire, which is based on the reality of Indian English language that the Indians use. The poet in this poem opens the poem by stating that he stands for peace and non-violence. He wonders why the world is always engaging into wars and acts of aggression. Then the poet is puzzled as to why no one is following Mahatma Gandhi, who is a great leader, and he says that the knowledge possessed by our ancestors is highly accurate, but the modern generation seems to be moving towards westernizations, and to which he says that looks fancy. He then talks about the event where Indira Gandhi was stoned by a youngster. He then mentions that a time when he was reading the newspaper about someone who threw a stone at Indira Gandhi, and he thinks to himself that it must be a very disturbed young man. Then he talks about his own habit of reading newspaper every day. He adds that he reads the Times of India journal every day in order to improve his own English. Ezekiel then uses a famous quote said by Mark Antony, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears." When Mark Antony said this phrase and uttered a speech, and his speech created a great impact among the Romans. In the same way, like how Romans paid attention to Mark Antony's words, the same way Ezekiel asks his readers to be patient, for there are so many things to look forward in the future, like regeneration, remuneration, and contraception. Then the poet talks about his habit of drinking lassi every day. He takes a cup of lassi which is very good for digestion. Then he says that lassi can be taken as equivalent to the Western wine if a little salt is added to make it a lovely drink. Ezekiel then confesses that he is an abstainer. Abstainer is a person who never drinks alcohol, and he says that alcohol is for drunkards while he would prefer simple drinks like lassi. He then remarks that he is sad and he is offended by the people of India. He says that he does not understand why the countries of the world are not maintaining peace with each other, and says that all are humans and why humans are not making peace with each other. He then uses India as an example to show unity in diversity, then talks about India's culture. He says that India is a country where many communities coexist and they tolerate each other, even though every individual have different habits. The poet then concludes by insisting that the kingdom of God is surely coming one day, and that says that he hopes to meet his fellow beings someday or the other. Let us recite the poem and have explanation for it. I am standing for peace and non-violence. Why world is fighting, fighting? Why all people of world are not following Mahatma Gandhi? I am simply not understanding. Ancient Indian wisdom is 100% correct. I should say even 200% correct. And modern generation is neglecting, too much going for fashion and foreign things. In this stanza or in this poem, the author Nissim Ezekiel is very much concerned about the world. He says that the world today has no peace. He says that he has come to speak for peace and non-violence. He says that he is much hesitated and frustrated to talk about today's people's ways, and he says that people are neglecting the great motive of such a splendid leader like Mahatma Gandhi ji. He is then thoughtful about the modern and the ancient culture. He says that the score that he can give to Asian culture and wisdom is more than 100%, or even he can give them 200%. He refers about modern culture that the people are being so terrible and inhuman. He says that the modern generation is neglecting everything and they are moving towards fashion and foreign things. Next stanza. Other day I'm reading a newspaper. There is a reference in brackets. Every day I'm reading Times of India to improve my English language. How one Gonda fellow throws stone at Indra Bem. Must be student unrest fellow, I am thinking. Friends, Romans, countrymen, I am saying. Inside the bracket to myself, lend me the years. He talks about his regular habit of reading newspaper, and he mentions that he reads Times of India every day in order to improve his English language. And as he reads the newspaper, he reads that Indira Gandhi is stoned by some young fellow, a student, and he refers the student as an unrest fellow, meaning somebody who is restless and somebody who doesn't want the existence of peace. He then quotes Mark Antony's phrase, friends, Romans, countrymen, I am saying, lend me the years. Next stanza. Everything is coming, regeneration, remuneration, contraception. Be patiently, brothers and sisters. So here he calls for a call to action that in the future the youngsters must have patience because there would be remuneration, regeneration and contraception. Next stanza. You want one glass lassi? Question mark. Very good for digestion. With little salt, lovely drink. Better than wine. Not that I'm ever tasting the wine. I'm the total teetotaler. Completely total. But I say wine is for the drunkards only. Here he gives an affirmation about his habits. So, first line he says that a glass of lassi is very good for digestion. Then he says that lassi has to be added with little salt and then it would be a lovely drink. He says that lassi is a better drink than the wine. Then he refers that he has not tasted wine because he is a total teetotaler and again affirms that he is a total teetotaler and refers that wine is for the drunkards and not for him. Next stanza. What do you think of prospects of world peace? Pakistan behaving like this? China behaving like that? It is making me very sad, I am telling you. Really? Most harassing me. All men are brothers, no? Question mark. In India also, Gujaratis, Maharashtris, Hinduwalas, all brothers, though some are having funny habits. Still you tolerate me, I tolerate you. One day, Ram Rajya is surely coming. He then questions the readers that what is the possibility of goodness in attaining world peace. He then refers two countries, Pakistan and China. He says that both Pakistan and China is a rival nation and why is it behaving so? Thinking about the two nations, he is sad and he says that it harasses him. He says that every men are brothers. He sets India as example and refers to different cultures that exist like Gujaratis, Maharashtris and Hinduwalas. He says that all three are brothers and though all have different habits and all different habits are funny, still each other is tolerating one another. And he says that one day the God's kingdom will come. You are going, but you will visit again, anytime, any day. I am not believing in ceremony. Always I am enjoying your company. Here in this stanza, he makes a reference about the parting of the reader and the writer because he is about to end his poem. He says that both himself and the reader would be missing each other's company. This poem, Nissim Ezekiel, published in a 16 poem collection called Hymns in Darkness, and this poem is published in the year 1976. Let's see the themes and symbols used in this poem. Firstly, Nissim refers to the Indian living conditions. Here he refers the new generation that is going after fashion and foreign things. He then presents the typical Indian makeup, that is the speeding up of modernization and industrialization, and thus says that the modern world is the act of violence and anti-social tendencies that are proving to be a menace. The next theme is he refers to ancient Indian wisdom, that is the wisdom that Mahatma Gandhi had given to India. Those are the prospects of peace and non-violence. And then he refers why not the youngsters taking up the doctrines of Gandhiji and makes a reference between the ancient wisdom and the modern wisdom. Ancient wisdom moved towards peace and modern wisdom is moving towards fashion. He is now calling all the fellow citizens as friends, Romans, countrymen, very similar to Mark Antony's phrase. He then talks about the habit of drinking lassi. It is good for digestion and says that it can be taken equivalent to the Western wine. By adding little salt, it becomes a lovely drink. He says that he is a total teetotaler. The next theme is unity in diversity. Here he refers to the coexistence of each culture. He says that every individual in India enjoys every moment of good company and everyone are happy in celebrating each culture along with ceremonies. In this poem, Nissim Ezekiel, he's giving us the actual situation of India. He rather apting to write on idealism and romanticism, just like the earlier Indian writers in English. He tried to look forward and write more typically just like an Indian and portrayed the Indian situation with an Indian attitude. Hope this video helps. If you have query, please write it down. And if you want to make suggestion for videos, please write it down below. Thank you for listening.